Now, please join me in welcoming our first speaker of the day, Daniel Monoranu, sorry, Head of Information Security at Skymetrix. Now, he has 8 years of management and C-level experience in both IT management and information security management, mostly in retail domain and lately in aviation technology field, managing both local and international operations, teams, and strategic partnerships. Daniel is a strong believer that when people come first, results will definitely follow. At some point, data security becomes an important concern for each company. It's just a matter of timing, before and or after. Let's see why, how, and when. We should secure our business driver and money maker, which is data. Daniel, you have the stage.
Thank you, guys, and really appreciate this opportunity. I hope that it will be fruitful for everyone. Before getting into the topic, I would really like to make a disclaimer. This is not meant to be a deep dive session. It's meant to be a general session. So you would see elements for which, if you feel the need of deep dive, for sure we would gladly like to deep dive later during the conversation or afterwards, just start working on things. So today it's about some general topics. Before going into the topic, I would like to share a bit about Skymetrix, our company. Our mission is to transform fuel and cost management in the aviation industry in order to maximize customer success. We are a company that manages technology related to fuel consumption, to ground handling costs, and so on. This is pretty much our history. We are a new company based on a merge of two main competitors in the market, Fuel Plus and AirPass. And altogether, everything related to cost when it comes to aviation, it's managed by our solutions. This is our experience, and from the figures, I'm not going to go into them, just for you to know, about a third of a worldwide what's related to fuel management goes through our systems, and about 40% of everything which is related to crew management, ground handling, and additional cost goes through our systems as well. And our platform and services pretty much aim to transform fuel and cost management and practically benefit our customers beyond only profitability. You know that based on or after COVID-19, you know how things work, and pretty much airline companies are more focused on cost. But this is pretty much it. I'm not gonna say any more of this. What do you see here on all those services and solutions and modules? Actually, everything is based on data. It's heavily based on data. And I'm fully sure that you, in your areas of expertise, also work on everything which is related to data. So, as we said earlier, the data nowadays is the money maker, is the business driver, okay? And we are heading more and more in that direction. We want to get the more we can get out of it. But apart from being important only for bringing in the cash, is it securing it also important? If you would need to imagine, how much do I think about getting the most money I can get out of data, and how much do I spend about thinking about how can I secure the data that brings money, that enables, that develops? So there are companies for which you might think that data security is important, and the ones for which you might think it's not important. My statement is that it's important to anyone, and you could challenge that. It's just a matter of when. It's important before something happens, or it's important after something happens. And today, we would like to look at this never-ending security story. You know, you might think that when people hear about security, oh, come on. You know, I'm a security guy. And when I talk to developers, I talk to DevOps, I talk to dev admins, and all of them are, oh, come on, not again. What does this guy want, you know? And it feels like a never-ending story. Here we go again. Every time when I get into a meeting, I hear here we go again. The problem is that security, it's not a never-ending story. The problem nowadays is that it's a never-starting story. Actually, based on my humble experience, I can truly share with you the following fact. We can honestly say that nowadays, in 2022, pretty much still the reasonable basics are not there yet. There are companies that provide services, that provide platforms, that rely heavily on data, and the reasonable basics are not there. And when I'm talking about reasonable basics, I'm talking about simple. It's not rocket science. It's plain common sense. You would see, and I'm not going to provide figures because figures you can find online. I just want to provide from, as I said, my humble experience together with you guys. Actually, the plain common sense security actions are just not there. I would roughly say 7, 8 out of 10 companies. For sure, you would find the ABCs of security which are not there. Companies that make money out of data, that provide services based on data. So, what are the reasonable basics that we would like to see and we would need to do before? So, as I said, we will talk about 3 main things today. Only 3 main things, the reasonable basics. And we hope that it will just generate a bit of interest, you know, and afterwards we can discuss and deep dive into it. My suggestions that I bring to you here today are not based on necessarily, you know, web-based best practices or certifications or so on. They are all of them put together with an addition 8 years of experience in trying to implement things. And this is what I learned. So in order for you, if you're in the beginning and you're interested in this topic, if you want to learn what not to do or how to do it properly, you know, it says that the wise one learns from the other one's mistake. The unwise one or the fool wants to learn only from his mistake. So please, I kindly ask you to be wise today. First thing, it might seem, you know, been there, done that, but it's highly important. I would say it's a cornerstone. First thing, before anything happens, in order to make information security count or data security count, we need to get top management support. We need to get top management support. And the statement is the following. If it matters to the top management, it will matter to the company. You know, sometimes the driver is like, you know, a very passionate colleague. A very, very passionate colleague that wants to do something, wants to push. And you see that at some point it bottlenecks, okay? The idea, the main point here is that we need to make it mean something for the top management, for the ones who decide for the business, to make sure that information or that data security is on the agenda. Not only P&L, not only EBITDA, not only, you know, turnover and so on. Also data security. And how to do that? Some lessons learned. First of all, the message that we should convey is always, when we want to push this data security topic, is to make sure that we convey the message that it's for the sake of the business, not for security's sake. Just to point something out, we don't do security for the sake of security. We do security for the sake of the business. We all know that data security is not our core activity. Maybe if we're a defender or so on, but there's a different story there. But we know that the activities that drive the business are other activities. So we just want to make sure that we're not, you know, pushing for it and saying, no, from now on, it's all about security. No. From now on, it's about the business. It's going to continue being about the business. It's just that we would need caring about the business, we would need to include this component also. Because a mistake here, and it's a mistake that I did when I was, let's say, younger and unseasoned in this topic, was coming to the business and asking for things. No one understands me. No. The good part about it is that I had support back then, and it helped. But the idea is focus on the business. Present security as an enabler for the business. And you know that now it's a shift of paradigm. People, I see this move from key account management to customer success manager. Present security as a vector of bringing customer success, and that will help out. Second one, it's one at a time principle, and it applies also to the budget. Meaning, one at a time hand principle. Meaning what? You give with one hand, you take with one hand. Never give with two hands, never take with two hands. Meaning what? You let's say, you will be added a resource, a dedicated resource for security. Don't start coming and saying, I need $500,000 for tools, I need money for that and for that. Take one step, do one thing, get a deliverable, reach a milestone, and then based on that milestone, based on what you gave, you ask again, and so on. When I started off back in my former company, when I started off, the security budget was inexistent. The security team was consisted only of myself. And 6 years later, the security budget was quite sizable, and there was not a security team, there was a security organization. But it happened one hand at a time, okay? And here in terms of best practices, what can I share with you is that at the moment, in order to have reliable security and in order to have a reasonable approach on it, we would, depends on the industry, but mainly between 5 and 10% of the IT, both CapEx, or investments, or OpEx, operational cost, would be recommended for security. Meaning, if you're a service provider, if you develop software, let's say, 10 to 5% of the cost for developing that software should go to security aspects, okay? Should go to, in order to make sure, and this is a reasonable way of thinking about it. If you are pretty much an IT company and you need to manage day-to-day operations, 5 to 10% out of the budget and size of the team for the day-to-day operations should be on security. And this is reasonable. In order to make, this is, once again, a before kind of topic, okay? And the last thing is choose the risk appetite or the driver, and that will take us to the second point. My question to you is the following. Do you know what's the risk appetite for the company that you work in? Do you know? I mean, we have like a low risk appetite, meaning we need to protect ourselves very well and do everything in order to mitigate the risk, or it's like anything goes. We'll see what happens. Because if you don't challenge people with this, you would see something. You would see that if you have a low risk appetite, saying like, okay, I don't want to have any unnecessary risks, usually this needs to come with some budgeting, with some priorities. Oh, you want to have a low risk appetite? Okay, but that will cost you before if you don't want it to be costly after. Okay? And based on the risk appetite, you would see what is the driver of the security approach. If your risk appetite is low and you would see, okay, I want to cover that risk by what? By certifications, by different measures and so on. You would find the driver. You would need to find the driver based on what? Not based on hunch, but based on the risk appetite. Just a question. What is the risk appetite of your company and what is your risk appetite? What is, there's the turnover appetite and the risk appetite. You would know which, for sure, the first one is way higher. It's high time to think about the second one also. So first thing, get top management support. The second thing, choose your driver. Choose your driver, and this is maybe the part that I like the most. What does it mean, choose your driver? What drives your data security approach? What does actually drive your data security approach? And there are four main things that could drive in a company the data security approach. And you're free to choose whatever works for you. First of all, it's the security posture in itself. Yes. The second one is compliance, and we will detail about each of them. Risk, and the fourth one I think you will love. What drives your data security approach? I think that at least for service providers or application providers, this might be the answer, meaning customers. I found that in a lot of situations, actually the one that puts security in the agenda of the company is the customer of the company. Okay, so we will take it one step at a time. Security posture, what does that mean? It means seeing and analyzing yourself, self-assessing the company and saying what's your maturity level, what's your posture in terms of security. In order to do that, there are mainly today I would recommend, based on what's out there, two frameworks which I find to be very helpful. The NIST cybersecurity framework and ISO 27001. ISO is a bit older, but it gets the job done, and NIST is a new kind of NIST CSFA, a new kind of framework, but it's quite interesting. As you see, each of them have different domains. Practically, what I want to say is the following. Those frameworks, again, are not rocket science. Those frameworks do only one thing. They provide a template in which we need to ask the relevant questions in order to find out where exactly we are at in terms of security. This is all that things are about. And for each of them, practically in terms of security posture, based on those frameworks, we could find ourselves from level 1 to 5 in terms of maturity. The maturity of our company in terms of security. Level 1 is when nothing happens, and level 5 is, let me put it in terms of industry. For the retail industry, what is considered as acceptable is a level 3. So for the retail, let's say that if you're at a level 3, you're pretty much there. If you work for companies which are highly regulated, yes, or let's think about like aviation industry or assurance or banking or so on, you would definitely need to be between a 4 and a 5. Okay, so first of all, what's the driver of a first driver for security would be a security posture. The question is the following. Do you know at the moment what's the security posture of your company? What's the maturity level of your company? Do you have something against which to compare it with? Do you have a measurement tool for it? This is the security posture. The second one is the compliance part. And this usually applies more in the heavily regulated industries. You know, if the first one, security posture, is pretty much driven internally, let's see, you know, someone from the team has a question. I cannot sleep at night before knowing or not knowing what's our maturity level. So internally. The compliance part comes externally, meaning in the heavily regulated industries, there are a lot of regulatory advisory boards and companies that need to be regulated there. So for that, we also have ISO 27001, for which we can be certified. We have GDPR. I have one question here. In terms of driver, you know, before asking the question, I'm going to say this. Data privacy was always an integral part of information security, always. Before GDPR, no one actually talked about data privacy, to be honest. Once the GDPR was in place, everyone was about data privacy, but data privacy was there from the beginning. What was the difference? The difference was that now, if you would violate data privacy starting with GDPR, it will cost you. Before, it didn't cost you anything. So look how compliance became a driver in terms of privacy. Why? Because we did not want to lose money. That's pretty much it. Okay? So just an example, because it's very, very interesting. People say a lot that, you know, before GDPR and after GDPR. The only difference is that before it would not cost us anything, after it costs us money. That's actually the only difference. The framework was there and the topic was there even from the beginning. If you work in an industry of card processing, payment processing, you would need the PCI DSS, which is again helpful. Now I think that you saw for the critical infrastructures that was something which is new on the table, let's say relatively new, the NIS directive, okay, and usually for the critical providers with the focus on infrastructure and incident management and business continuity and so on. And the one which I love the most is something which is pretty new, but it's, let's say, the hot topic of the day in security. It's the SOC 2 compliance, is the SOC 2. So, based on, before going further, based on your industry, a driver of security could be compliance. So you should look I mean, if you are already in industries which are heavily regulated, you for sure know all of this. But as I said, those are frameworks. At the end of the day, all of them ask pretty much the same questions, but in different ways. At the end of the day, they are all tools, and we need to see them as tools, okay? What is working for you? What's the compliance that you strive for? Okay, for each of the industry, we show something. For SOC 2, usually SOC 2 is meant for service providers, for application providers and service providers. Why? They are mainly based on, SOC 2 is mainly based on what's called trust service criteria. So what's the message here is the following. I provide you an application, or I provide you a service, okay? And I provide you my SOC 2 certification, which means what? It means that my services are trustworthy for you to use. And what does SOC 2 do? Actually, it spares you from a lot of questions and assessments from the customer. So I know from experience that if the customer wants to send you on an RFP or something like that, a questionnaire of 500 questions, and you say you provide the SOC 2 certification, they will say, okay, thank you, it's covered by the SOC 2. Okay, so and especially for the North America part, all the North America companies love SOC 2. So if we're talking about 2022, like let's say 4 years ago, I would have recommended ISO 27001. Today, I would highly recommend SOC 2. And there are two types, SOC 2 Type 1 and SOC 2 Type 2. Pretty much they do the same thing, it's just that that Type 1 measures the security controls at a given point, or measures the way they are defined, and SOC 2 Type 2 measures the effectiveness of those security controls. I'm gonna give you an example. For example, if, let's think about this, pen testing, yes, penetration testing for an application, which is simple. If the SOC 2 Type 1 control states there is a pen test recurrency on a specific application, so if we have a pen test, that control would be checked. SOC 2 Type 2 says that penetration test, recurring penetration test, should be effective. Meaning what? It means that it's not enough. If SOC 2 Type 1 looks at having a pen test every quarter, SOC 2 Type 2 looks at having a pen test every quarter, but seeing that the results are not the same. Seeing that you do something about it. If you don't do anything about it, you have a pen test every quarter, but at the end of the day, it's not proven to be effective. So this is the difference between SOC 1, SOC 2 Type 1 and SOC 2 Type 2. I would highly recommend it. And what's interesting here, another interesting thing, is that as opposed to other certifications, the SOC 2 certification can be obtained based on scope, meaning you do not need to certify your entire organization, your entire company. You can certify products or components of products. Okay? For example, you would see a lot of products that say we have SOC 2 certification. Look, deep dive into it and look a bit, and you will see that maybe not the entire product is SOC 2 certified. Maybe the back end is SOC 2 certified, or the front end, or only an orchestrator, or only a component. Okay? So this helps you because if you have a narrower scope, then you can focus your attention on the, let's say, the product that you want to sell or want to upsell on, okay? If you have 5 products and you say that, okay, the main drivers are those 2, I'm going to focus on those 2, which is helpful. So highly recommended here. The third driver for data security is risk. And this is, again, internal speaking. So what's the risk, actually? When likelihood and impact come together, we have risk, okay? So likelihood and impact equals risk. What we want to do at the end of the day is to make sure that everything which is on high, meaning high likelihood and high impact, we want to get out, okay? But what do we measure actually? What kind of risk? There are 4 main information security risks that we would like to look upon. First one is the information leakage. What's the risk of my data leaking in my company? And this is a question for you. Do you know what's the risk, what's the likelihood of critical data from your company or critical data from your customers to go astray? Do you know what's the level of risk there? I don't know. Second one is the risk of business disruption. What's the risk of your core systems crashing? You know, not being patched, or if they crashed, not having the ability to back them up or to replicate them or so on. What's the risk there? Okay? What's the risk of fraud? What's the risk of someone making fraudulent changes in the databases or in the systems without, very important, without having someone to track them? You know what I love? I love databases with SI user, yeah, with admin user shared, which has all the logs off because of performance issues. You know, this is, if you have something like that, I can fully assure you that the risk of fraud, business disruption, information leakage is high. You know, just by doing that, okay? And the last one is law infringement or non-compliance. Meaning I have everything figured out here, but based on the way I'm processing data, I can have an infringement on GDPR, for example. Okay, so a third approach in terms of driving security is risk. Okay, seeing what is the critical risk that I have in the organization, and then focusing on mitigating it. Okay, and very important, because people, when they hear about, you know, risk management and so on, seems like a lot of BS, but it's not. Actually, risk does not mean fear. You know, oh, I'm afraid that something will happen. No, risk means priority. Meaning that I know what hurts the most or what has the biggest likelihood or impact, and I want to mitigate it. And in this way, I will focus on my priorities. As simple as that. In order to measure risk, there are a lot of frameworks out there, and we will talk about them with different occasions. Okay? And the last one, as I said, my favorite, what drives the security in your company? The customer. I heard a lot about things like that, meaning, you know, we don't care about security per se, but we care about making the customer happy. Or If the customer wants security, we'll provide security. So that would mean that your approach is pretty much an a la carte approach. Whatever the customer wants, you'll have. You want encryption? We'll give you encryption. You want anonymization? We'll give you anonymization. You want backup? But we should be, we should be a bit savvier and smarter than our customers in some areas that we own, right? Because they come to us not only for what we do, but for what we know. It's a bit embarrassing for the customer to come to you and talk about security topics that you don't even know nothing about. Just saying, okay? So, how many of the security features are driven by design? We thought about them, or used the tools that we talked about earlier. And how many of the security features are driven by the customer? Just a question. And usually the customer asks about the illeties. I think you know about the illeties, and it's a word. It's not half a word, it's actually a word. And the illeties are the following: availability, integrity, confidentiality, traceability, usability, scalability, and all the other illeties. In terms of data security, actually, the first four, what you see here, are the main requirements for securing data. Securing data means confidentiality of data, availability of data, traceability, and integrity. Usually, when people think about data security, they think only about confidentiality. But you can have public information that needs to be available 24/7. And that means that needs to be secured. Okay? And let's have a case study here in terms of product security. You know that at the moment, a worrying number of technologies and products contain OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. Yeah, the 2021 version in production. What does OWASP mean? Open Web Application Security Project. So usually when an attacker wants to hack a system, they go for the top 10 OWASP. Most of them can be can be fixed within a couple of days, let's say 1 week. But still, a lot of them, for mature products also, are there. So that means that we know that functional topics overthrow security topics. We know, we understand, because the functionalities bring in the money. It's just that, okay, at the end of the day, this will not help us. And this will lead to low-hanging fruits, meaning hackers that look for top 10 OWASP, because I'm going to share you a little secret. The hackers are quite lazy people. If they were not lazy, they will work in security, on the white side of the force, not the dark side of the force, okay? So they will go for low-hanging fruit. If they don't find it, they will go to someone else. And there are plenty of low-hanging fruits there, okay? So a step here, which I tried and it works, is a first step is rule 10-to-1. 10-to-1 rule, meaning for every 10 features in the backlog for product development, one to be security. It's just as simple as that. For every 10 features in the backlog for product development, one could be security. And step 2, you could go to 5-to-1. For each 5 features, one should be security. And that, for sure, if you have this approach, you will never have top 10 OWASP, you will never have issues in this direction. And very important, raise awareness on secure coding. Okay? There is still a low level of knowledge in terms of secure coding for the developers, and that leads us to DevSecOps. Everyone talks about DevSecOps, yes, but it's still something out there. It's still mainly on PowerPoints and not in the code, okay? So those are the 4 drivers: security posture, compliance, risk, and customers. What is your driver? If you don't have one, you should choose one. And the last step is define your SOAP and use it. It's good to use SOAP. First, you need to define it. Define your SOAP means strategy, objectives, and action plan. Strategy, objectives, and action plan. We know what's the driver. We know what is the direction. But if we decide like, okay, our strategy would be based on compliance, we have that. We will have the objective of obtaining SOC 2 Type 2 next year, by the end. Great. And then we will do an action plan. for that, that will cover the major information security domains. Pretty much all our action plans, all the frameworks tackle those major domains of information security. And last but not least, our action plan should be backed up by a robust security toolset for each of the relevant domains. Bear in mind something. You saw that we are at the end of the presentation, praise God, and I did not say anything about tools until now. Because, just lesson learned, never start with tools. This is how amateurs do it. Be a professional. Start with strategy, start with risk, start with top management sponsorship. Not with, I found this tool, this could be helpful. This is not amateur hour, okay? It's good when you're in high school and want to tackle security, but not when you're protecting the data of companies and customers, okay? So, in the end, I'm gonna go back to my opening statement. Data security is important for every company. When? It depends if before or after. Before means proactivity, planning, building, and all of this with reasonable amounts of money. After means pretty much reactivity, pressure, damage control, and lots of money. My closing statement would be this. Start this never starting story, not never ending story. No, just start it. And do those three things. Get top management support, choose your driver, and define your SOAP. And make sure, and this is highly important, make sure that you keep it a never-ending story. Security should be the never-ending story, because this is what will keep everyone safe. At the end of the day, do your before, and after might never come. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Do we have any questions for Daniel?
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for the presentation, really nice. Question. So we are all data-driven in here, and you've been mentioning basically revenue as the main driver. How do you measure basically the success of your security layers? Are there other metrics that you consider, like besides the revenue? Let's say you did something, you implemented it, and then how do you measure that this is a business success?
Apart from contributing to the revenue.
Yeah.
One more, so indeed, contributing to the revenue, this is one thing. And another thing which indeed has added value is the fact that you do something. Let's say you implement something and you promote on it, okay? So you differentiate from other, it doesn't bring necessarily more revenue, but it brings more trust as opposed to different competitors. Let me put it this way. When I was both on the customer side and on the provider side. When I was on the customer side and asked about security, I could know from the answers that those security answers were given by a database administrator, by a project manager, or so on. And I knew if the answers were given by a security fellow, by a security officer, or so on. So by default, in terms of perception, I would perceive that specific provider as, preferable to the other one because they focus on security. Okay, this is one thing, and it's a reactive thing, but the best, and I would say the one which I love the most, is you going to the customer and just letting them know. Just wanted to let you know that we are kind of working on securing this aspect here. We found something about Kubernetes security that just wanted to let you know. And you work on the perception. It will not bring you additional revenue, but it will bring you their loyalty. This is one of them.
So long-term gain. And another question, sorry, follow.
Please.
So you said that you need the buy-in from the top management, right?
Yes.
To start this.
Yes.
But I understand that you started it differently from down to the up.
No, I actually started by, as I said, we started small because that was the situation there. But one of the first things that I did was making sure that on a recurrent basis, I have access to the top management and just update them related to what we did and what we still need to do. Okay, so here, very practical, every 3 months, Alex, I think 3 months, let's say every once per quarter, I would go to the top management and say, look what we did, look what we need to do, and look where we need your help. So we made sure that the agenda of the top management recurrently has the information security topic on it. And now, as we speak, I do this on a monthly basis with the top management, letting them know. So doing this, for example, for Skymetrix, in my past endeavors, I learned this in, let's say, 1.5 years. Now, I just plug and play. For the beginning, I said, we want to have monthly management presentation. I have the budget for the next 2 years. Yeah, so this is the way.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
30 more seconds, just to let you know.
I'll have one short. There are no others. You talked about risk and a lot of interesting elements around that, like risk adversity. And I'm very sure that top management is very aware of these concepts, right? And they have them defined in their mind. How do we make them more transparent to operational level?
To the operational level, as I said, the operational level at the end of the day derives from the top management. So, who is the driver of this risk awareness part from the top management needs to deep dive and go to the operational part. What I do is actually make sure that the top management is aware, but let's face it, I don't know how is it in your company. If you want to get things done, you don't do it with the top management, you do it with the middle management, okay? You decide things with the top management, but you do them with the middle management. So we keep them informed, we keep the top management informed, but we keep the middle management working on it. This is our approach.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.